Well, good morning, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Tack Unbridled. I'm your host, Daniel. How's everybody doing today? Everybody hanging in there? I mean, it's tough out there. Gas prices are still really expensive. Grocery prices are expensive. Insurance is going up. It's tough out there. I hope you guys are hanging in there. I know I am, but sometimes it feels like just barely. We just make enough to keep the lights on, keep the store open another day. It's been especially hard, the last month or so. For those of you in this industry that know Dover Saddlery, they're closing their doors. They're shutting down. They couldn't make it, and we got a branch, a location 30 minutes up the road. So everybody's been running down there and trying to scoop up the sales. People don't realize that their stuff's just overpriced to begin with, but they see the sale sign, so they're running down there to scoop the sales. So it's been slow here. We're still making it. We're still here, but it's been tough. It's been a struggle. But enough of that belly aching. This episode, I want to talk about employees. I kind of nicknamed the necessary evil, and it's not that employees are evil. Don't take that the wrong way. It's just it's a whole nother level of stress that's added to you when you take on employees. Not every business needs help. My dad ran an excavating outfit for 30 years, and he was always a one-man band. Other than when I worked for him, but he was all that time he was always a one-man band. But he worked Monday to Friday, like I don't want to say an animal, but he worked hard. But he took off on Saturdays and Sundays and spent it with the family, spent it with us. So he had that, that release, that time off, to get away from it. Samantha, my wife, we just did the interview with her. She's a one-man band, but again, she makes her own schedule and can take days off around, her wanting to go ride horses or what, what she wants to do. So she doesn't need the help. Mad Tack is open 7 days a week. It is a non-stop grind. So, ultimately, for my own sanity, this business needs help. We need employees. Now, the first year, well, I rewind a little bit more than that. The first 2 years that we were in business, 2012 and 2013, we were a mobile unit. Load up the trailer, go to a show, an expo, clinic, whatever, set up our goods and sell. And we didn't need help. We were pretty much working just the weekends, a couple weekdays here and there, but most of the time it was on the weekends. So there was enough time off that we didn't need help. And, Sam and I, we buckled down and we got it done. It wasn't that, that big of an issue. But come 2014, when we opened up our first brick and mortar there in the old Madison location, the first year of operation, I ran the store for one solid year, except for Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Easter were the only 3 days the store was closed. And it, at first I was just like, yeah, the adrenaline, the rush of just, running your own business and running your own store, it got me through it, but it got old really quick, not having any time off at all. Mowing the grass at home in the dark, not being able to get to the bank or the post office or, shopping, after hours. Fortunately, Joey wasn't in school yet, so we didn't have any school obligations to worry about. But it was, I don't want to say torture, but I started going crazy. There was no time off, there was no time away from it. So we realized, within that first year, we need some help. If we're going to have any kind of life outside the business, we need some help. So I'm going to, talk a little bit about, um, you know, how to choose them and what it's involved with having employees, because these are some of the things that they kind of don't teach you. There isn't any class out there to warn you about any of this stuff. And I'm going to kind of break it up into two parts because at that time, from 2014 to really 2020, 2021, to this day we still operate the store, the brick and mortar store, but from 2014 to 2020-ish, we were also building horse jumps, and that it was its own separate entity of the business. That's actually, we'll talk about that first. We'll talk about the horse jump building part. So 2014, we opened the brick and mortar. 2015, we got the opportunity to start renting the warehouse next to the store. Big 1,500 square foot warehouse that, we could build our jumps and have a horse jump fabrication shop. And that part of the business took off fast. It was unbelievable how many people wanted our horse jumps, and we were building, really good quality stuff. So word of mouth spread like wildfire. And I knew fairly quickly there, I needed help. There was just no way that I could operate the store and build jumps. It didn't happen. It wasn't going to happen. So we started looking for jump building help. Now, it was kind of an entry level position. I mainly needed somebody to paint. I could do the fabrication and assembly and all of that, but I needed somebody to paint. And, we started looking for help. And, a lot of the first, I would say, I don't know, half a dozen to 10 people or so that I hired were like friends or customers in the store. Oh yeah, I want a little side gig and all of that. I'll warn you guys, that's probably the worst thing you could do is hire friends. And I don't want to sound, negative Nancy on that, but it's really hard to tell your friends what to do. And if, they get offended by it, then your friendship's, at jeopardy. So, I remember the very first kid that I ever hired was a really good customer of the store. It was her son. And he's looking for a job and he would be great and, blah, blah, blah. Okay, yeah, I'll hire him on. And he was terrible. He, every time I turned around, he was just goofing off and not really doing anything and on his phone all the time. And, I tried to put up with it for a little bit, but ultimately I just had to let him go. I was like, I have a job that needs to be done and I need you to do it. And you just goofing off the whole time. And of course, then the customer, ladies gotten offended. Oh, I can't believe you got rid of him. So, I knew fairly kind of quickly that I was going to have to kind of hire outside the box for that. I hired, within a couple of years of each other, I hired two individuals, and that both, so I'm not going to name names. So, so I'll just, number one, he, really nice guy and really did good work. I could, once I showed him everything needed to be done, I could kind of cut him loose and he would go do his own thing. When he showed up, and that was the struggle, was getting him to show up. Was a nightmare, and ultimately I had to cut him loose because he never showed up. And then I heard somebody right after that, and he actually lasted about 2 years. And again, top quality work. I mean, this guy, I was really, really happy with his work. He actually brought a couple things to the table that I hadn't thought of, as far as fabrication and painting and stuff. And it really kind of streamlined things. And he was working out great, except, he started having struggles showing up. And, I would have deadlines to get certain orders done by a certain time. And, he wouldn't show up. And then I get a message from him in the afternoon. Was I supposed to come to work today? Yeah. Where the heck are you? Oh, well, something came up. I got to do this and do that. And, I put up with it for a little while. Then all of a sudden, I notice that, he's taking pictures of all of my horse jumps. And I go, what are you doing? Oh, I decided I'm starting a jump building, gig on the side. You're what? And you're using pictures of my stuff? He's, oh yeah, is that a problem? You're darn right it's a problem. You don't think that's a conflict of interest? You doing the same thing I'm doing? Oh, well, you're having trouble keeping up, so figured I would take on, some of your cutting. No, get the heck out of here. Ultimately, the very last person that I hired before we shut the horse jumps down, was actually the best employee that I have ever had. And I'll name his name. His name is Miles. Miles, if you're watching or listening to this, I hope everything's going great for you, dude, because you were the best guy I ever had working. Miles was a younger gentleman who was joining the Marines, and this was right in 2020. He was joining the Marines, and his boot camp got delayed due to COVID and all that. So he needed a summer gig, and sent me this extremely polite email. Hi, my name's Miles, and I heard you might be looking for help, and blah 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 blah. I had him come down. I interviewed him and put him to work, and he was this guy was a machine. It didn't matter what the weather was, the conditions. He never complained about anything. He just got in there. He brought a little Bluetooth speaker, and he would turn his tunes on, and he would just buckle down and get to work. And man, oh man, I swear, if he was still around, I would probably still be building jumps today. And it lasted, I don't know, 5 months, 6 months maybe, and then his boot camp got called up, and he had to leave. And I was really upset when he left. But he did amazing work. And then pretty much right after that, COVID, and I'm going to do a special episode just about the horse jump part of the business. But ultimately, we closed it down. And life went on. And Miles, if you're listening, man, I hope everything's going great for you. Now, the brick and mortar part of the business, which is obviously still in operation. Again, 2014 into 15, I ran it 365, and knew right away we needed some store help. And I don't think people realize how much of an investment it is to find the right person. Because there's everybody out there says they're looking for work, and then when it comes time to work, that's when all the problems arise and show up. It is a huge investment in time, money, sanity. I mean, it's everything. And we're retail. So it is, for the most part, a very entry level position. But how do I put this? We're a specialized retail, so I need somebody that you know knows their way around a horse. They don't need to be an expert by any means. I'm more than willing to teach and train. That's my job as an employer is to to make sure they're ready. But they have to be willing to learn. They have to be willing to put the time in. Um, so, I, I don't want to say that MadTack is anything overly special as far as trying to find that right person, but there's more to it than people realize. It's not about just putting a body behind the counter. Um, because again, there's so few tack stores, word of mouth spread. So if you get somebody bad in there, and then the customer has a bad experience, and they go, oh yeah, I went to Mad Tack, and that lady behind there, or that guy behind the counter, or whatever, was nasty to me. It doesn't take long for that to spread. Or I went there and they didn't know what they were talking about. They sold me the wrong stuff. Like I can't have that. So um, the other thing too that people don't understand a lot is actually you know finding these people. Like I said, again, everybody's looking for work. Everybody's looking for a job until you need to find somebody, and then you have all of these potential candidates. But when you actually filter out anybody that's worth anything, it really gets narrow. So anyway, when we in 2015, when we started, realizing that we needed some help, we started advertising through all of the normal stuff, Facebook and Indeed and, flyers and, you know, social media and all that stuff. And, we started getting some candidates trickling in, and, some of them were, customers that were in the store, and some were friends. And, again, it's a slippery slope, because if you hire a friend on, or you hire a customer, a good customer, and things go south, it can go bad real quick. I remember, I don't know if it was the very first person that we hired. I believe it was. I don't remember her name, although I wouldn't say it anyway. She came in and interviewed, and both Sam and I really liked her. Very, she had retail experience. She was young, retail experience, but very nice, very presentable. And what I thought was, willing to learn the business. And we hired her on, and obviously gave her all of the training on how to run a sale and saddle trials and all of that stuff. And she was not a horse person, which at that time we were like, oh, okay, that's fine. We can teach you the basics. And I remember this girl absolutely loved to clean. That was the one thing I absolutely loved about her. She loved to clean. The store had never looked better than when she was working. Just everything was so organized and spick and span. The problem that we ran into was that she wasn't willing to learn anything about the horse world. And again, I didn't need an expert, but I needed somebody who was willing to learn. And it was so bad that, like, I'd have a customer come in and, oh, do you have any whatever? Do you have any draft size halters? And she'd just be like, I don't know. And well, like, even if you didn't know, just can you point them to the direction of where the halters are? But then what's a halter? Like, what? You just follow what I'm saying, guys. Like, it wasn't. that she was dumb. She just wasn't willing to learn anything. Now, it wasn't like somebody was asking her, "Oh, do you have a Kimberwick bit, or do you have do you have a 5.5 inch Pelham?" It wasn't that specific. It was like, "Do you have a halter?" I don't know. I don't know. Like, and then somebody would call on the phone. "Hey, I'm looking for a waterproof blanket, size 78. Do you have any blankets?" I don't know. And it got so bad, and we kept trying to teach and say, "Hey, like, we don't need a horse expert, but we need somebody that's even if you don't know what the item is, like, point them in the right direction, or and it just ultimately we had to let her go. I felt kind of bad, but she, if you're not willing to put in any kind of time, like, I don't know, it just felt like we were spinning our wheels with her. um Right after her, we hired another really young girl. I think she lasted maybe a week. You talk about somebody whose cell phone was absolutely glued to their hand. Oh my God. And we had discussions with her like, put the phone away, like, you're on business time. Put the stinking phone away. And the icing, or the straw that broke the camel's back for me, was I was working in the jump building, and I come back over to the main store, and she's sitting behind the counter with her feet up on the counter, on a phone conference with one of her friends. And I walk in, and she's like, "Oh no, you can go ahead and continue. It's just my boss," and didn't even take her feet off the counter. I'm like, "No, done. Goodbye." I sent her home. I was like, "You can take the rest of the day off." "Oh, really? Oh, that's so nice of you." Sent her home, sent her an email. "Thanks, but no thanks. Don't come back in." Um, then we hired, again, I don't want to name names. Hired a great, great lady. She worked for us, I would say, about 2 years, maybe more. Um, Great person, extremely reliable, knew her way around horses, and did an absolutely fantastic job. The struggle that we ran into is she wanted more hours. She was ultimately looking for something full time, and we couldn't do it. We couldn't do it. 2 days a week was all we could do. We just couldn't do any more. It's not that the store wasn't doing good enough, but you know, this store is my job. So, you know, I just, there was nothing else for me to do. If I ever gave her, 5 days a week, I was building horse jumps, but there was nothing else for me to do, and there just wasn't enough, need for it. So ultimately, she ended up finding a full-time gig and left. And we're still friends. I mean, she still comes in on occasion, and that was the one time, though, that, like, right after she left, that really hit me about what an investment it is, to get the right person. And then when they leave and you're just left with nobody, it's tough. Man, is it tough. And the next person we hired wasn't for like a few more months, because we were advertising and doing lots of interviews, and just couldn't find that person, couldn't find that right person. That was one of the previous episodes I mentioned about the guy coming in and was like, "Yeah, I sued my boss, and this and that." "Yeah, okay, great, you're hired." Tell me you punched a coworker in the face and all that stuff. Those are the kind of candidates you have to choose from. But ultimately, we did. We found the next person, and it was just sheer coincidence. Again, not going to name names. Just had a lady just randomly walk in the store and was like, "Hey, are you by any chance looking to hire? Are you looking for any help?" I was like, "Yeah, we've been looking for help. Did you see our job postings or classifieds or anything?" No, no, I was just driving by. Just was just interested. And I fell in love with her right away. This person, I knew horses top to bottom, knew retail top to bottom, was a senior, was retired, just looking for part time work, had completely open availability to whatever days of the week I needed her. Um, we interviewed her, but I pretty much knew immediately that you're hired. And she worked for us for 6 years. Um, and I can tell you that me personally, I was the one that screwed it up and had to let her go after 6 years. And this is kind of what this podcast is about, is to tell you guys the behind the scenes stuff. The mistake that I made was we basically treated her like family. We took her in as part of our family. And ultimately, what happened was the employee boss line was lost. It the boss employee relationship was gone, and it was a family member at that point. We had her over for dinners, and we would, on holidays and stuff, close the store and take her to events and stuff. And, I did work at her house, and, um, you know, it, she was basically like our grandmother. And what I unfortunately did is I started overlooking stuff, mess ups at the store, things I would ask her to do that wouldn't get done. And I would just be like, oh, well, yeah, it's okay. But the truth of the matter is it kind of wasn't okay. When all's said and done, I don't mean to come off as like a meanie by any means, but when all's said and done, I'm the boss. You need to do what I tell you to do. And it was getting to the point where I would give her stuff to do. It wasn't getting done. And then I would say, hey, you didn't do blah, blah, blah. And, well, I didn't think it needed to be done. I did something else instead. Well, that's not your call. That's my call. Like, I don't need you to agree with what I want you to do. Like, certain things need to get done. And you could see there was just some resentment starting to build here and there. And truth be told, I just should have handled it better. I really should have. We're all human. I'm a human. I make mistakes. I didn't really address things when they came up and say, "Hey, this is not right. We need to fix this." I just overlooked it as, "Oh well, I'll just let it go and let it go and let it go." And you can only let things go for so long. And it just reached a melting point, a boiling point, where I just couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't deal with it anymore. And now, I feel really bad about the situation, because had I have handled it differently, um, she'd probably still be working here, and but again, I'm a human. I make mistakes. If you guys take anything away from this, episode, is that you know their employees, they're a insane investment, and it's you gotta do things right, and I kind of handled things wrong, and I'm not saying that I'm 100% to blame on it by any means. Like, there was things that she was doing that were wrong and should have been addressed. It just was my job to address them. um, Now, back in 2020, we also at that point opened up a second location, and Sam, my wife, went out and was running that store, and ultimately she needed help at that store. So we hired actually two ladies out at that store. Both of them extremely part time. One was a college girl. Um, could not have asked for better help. Just extremely nice, extremely pleasant. Knew enough about horses to to run the store, and it was a very people person oriented. The second lady we hired was pretty much the same thing. Just was looking for something extremely part time, make some extra cash. So that store ultimately we really didn't have any issues out there with employees. Both of them worked out great. Um, and ultimately when we closed that store down, both of them had kind of gone on and done their own thing at that point, and were had full-time jobs. So it really, we didn't have to fire anybody. We let them go, but they understood, but they were about to go and step off and do their own thing anyway. So it ultimately, it worked out and was fine. Here at this store, after that 6 year, run, and I having to let her go, it took, oh boy, I would say 4 months, 3, 4 months before, I found the next person that's working for us now. Um, it is tough to find a good quality candidate. And we're, like I said, we're a niche industry. Um, so I need to find somebody that's horse savvy enough to get the job done. I don't need an expert, but I need somebody that knows their way around at least a little bit. Somebody that's willing to work part time, and that's a lot of the issue that I run into is people want full time or nothing, and horse people especially, like, their weekends are, that's their horse time, that's their ride time. And I'm always looking for somebody on Sunday, because Sunday I really want to be the family time. I want to take that day off and spend it with the family. And people are out riding horses on Saturdays and Sundays, so it's tough to find somebody. And the lady that's working for us now is great. I have no complaints. Everything is working out fine. She's only been with us, I don't know, maybe 2 months or so, but there's been no issues. Everything is fine. So I'm hoping, that I learn from my mistakes with previous employees, and just address issues when they come up, um, and hopefully, knock on wood, things can continue to go well. But I can tell you, it's tough. It is tough. When in your business get to the point where you realize that you need some help. Um, you really, really have to do your homework, because it is an investment. It is a huge, huge investment. Um, and it's not all peaches and cream all of the time. I mean, it adds a whole nother level of stress onto it, because there's times where, you know, there's been times where the business is extremely slow. I mean, horribly slow, but you still have an employee on board. So at that point, you almost feel like you're kind of working for them, because you can't just cut their hours. Oh, well, this week's not doing good, so don't come in this week. But next week, oh, it's busy, come on in. Like, no, you can't do that. Or at least you shouldn't do that. So you have to. I mean, after my dad got out of the excavating outfit, he opened a restaurant. Don't ask, guys. That's a long story. But he did that for a few years, and I remember him telling me he was like, that whole entire time of the restaurant felt like he was just working for his employees, working for the waitresses and the cooks. And I know the feeling. We've never really had more than 2 or 3 people working for us at the same time, but sometimes it does. It feels like you're just working for them. But you got to remember, you're the boss. You set the rules, and you know choose wisely. Choose wisely, because you're trusting that person. They're the face of your business while you're not there, and that is extremely important. Um, you have to trust them with money. When customers are paying money, you have to trust them with your product, that they're not, stealing product. And, um, you have to trust that they're going to be there on time. And, our store closes at 6 o'clock, and you don't want them cutting out at 5:30 or 5:45. You want them there until 6 o'clock. If somebody walks in the door at 5:55, you have store hours. Like, you're supposed to still be there. So, you need to trust that they're going to be there, to take care of the customer and to take care of your business. And, that they're not going to be confrontational, with a customer who's having a problem or having a bad day. Now, it's different when I'm here. I won't tolerate that kind of stuff. But, and I also don't want my employee to be a pincushion. They need to stand up for themselves too. But, it's tough. It is tough. It is, if you take anything away from this episode, just trust me on what a big deal, what a big investment it is in order to find the right candidate, to find the right person. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I know kind of went over a lot, but it's a very important part of the business. And again, not every business needs employees, but the bulk of you out there, at some point you're going to need some help. And it's an investment. You have to choose wisely to find that right person. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please let me know down below if there's any topic specifically that you want me to talk about. I will be more than happy to discuss it. If there's anybody you'd like me to interview, if you'd like to be interviewed, let me know. We can arrange that. But thank you guys for the support. Thank you for tagging along, and I will catch you on the next one. Later.